Welcome to Get Serious. Let's go over some other takeaways from the Hormozi live event I attended a bit over a month ago. Now there's still so much good content to go over. You can see a number of these previous podcasts with various takeaways. Again, this was all from a one-day event for the 100 affiliates who got a spot to attend acquisition.com headquarters for 11 straight hours with Alex Hormozi, and it was mostly consisting of fireside chats and direct audience Q&A here. So I've just been going over all these various notes here. So let's jump right back into it. This is something Hormozi remarks on constantly here, just different iterations of it, but I noted it down and starred again too, of just, where he was just remarking, that's the volume, the reps, the level of focus you have is the ultimate determinant of success. And I keep coming back to this again and again. Because it's the most boring answer, and it's especially in today's society where, pretty much every generation, especially the younger ones, just want everything all at once. Instantly, just again, the instant gratification culture usually doesn't actually lead to longer term satisfaction, but that's besides the point. But to get those reps in and to stay focused and to maintain that volume, I mean, this is especially the focus piece. That's probably the number one thing that I struggle with most. I think most entrepreneurs, if you're really being honest with yourself, why you haven't gotten the results that you would like, or maybe you have gotten the results, but you can do more. Like the focus is the number one piece. And like the volume and the rep side, to me, that's like almost how much pain can you handle? Like when I was remarking the other day about reviewing 2,000 properties in 84 hours. Yeah, it was like brutal amounts of volume. Not something that I could sustain doing every single day, but it's just builds up so much more confidence in our own underwriting capabilities that that exercise was definitely worth it. Because again, I just feel we are, even though we're just getting started, like our capabilities from an underwriting perspective continue to get recognized. We continue to have great results. Like I was just tallying up, even our hard numbers heading into the end of the year, and they're industry leading. Like we're doing great in a very, very difficult real estate market. And so like that volume is paying off. And yeah, I mean, the focus piece, and I heard Hormozi talk about it recently too. I hadn't heard of this accelerator, but it's this 12-week accelerator in the Bay Area. No surprise. I think it's called TH0. You should check out their website. I love how they make it so that it fits exactly the branding that they're trying to do, and they basically lock these founders into a house where they take care of all of their human level needs, like all the food and sleeping quarters, etc., and just allow them to stay focused for as many hours a day as possible on their company for 12 weeks straight to get as much progress done, solving as many constraints as possible. And they're just posting stellar results. Crazy how many, 7-figure plus companies are being built up within a few months here because it's just an insane level of focus. And again, you should check out their website where it's like their thesis. And it's just a page and it just says subtraction. That's it. I appreciate the minimalism when it's done properly, especially in websites that are so noisy nowadays. So, it's clearly working as a thesis here. So very cool from that. We've talked about focus a million times, but it bears worth re-mentioning because it's just like, it is the number one struggle for myself as well too. Oftentimes I feel like, I should just be locked away or like locked all my other notifications or devices out of sight. Like the mental burden is just, it's crazy. That's a whole nother podcast to go into, but that's probably my number one biggest issue to solve as far as what's throttling my potential as an entrepreneur. And, some of that level of focus here, and I think, Hormozi has mentioned this too, but he was going over this during a live event of where him and his team had posted 35,000 pieces of content over this past calendar year, roughly, or maybe over the past 12 months, something like that. And, he's gone over this in some videos before, but like the key takeaway for this is that, both in acquisitions experience as well as the companies within their portfolio, like they have shown within the metrics that results from content scales linearly. So, of course, you have to be posting qualified, like if you're just posting slop, that's not going to get you results. And unfortunately, a lot of companies just post slop. But assuming you hit at least that bare minimum of quality that is going to bring more potential customers your way, or even more followers, like posting more is just going to get you more results. And it is a perfect corollary of the do more, get more type of setup. And that's another massive push we're making over, like, I have kind of two bigger bets that we're making over this next year. I'll talk about them separately, probably multiple times as we continue to push on this. But like, the newsletter that I've been putting out, Serious News, if you haven't signed up, like you can check out our website. Like it is like almost fully directed now for a call to action of getting people to subscribe, because email lists are great for nurturing, but it's not great for bringing in new subscribers. So like you have to be, very, very focused in other methods to bring in more people just so they can get on the list. And we continue to see how, popular from just open rates and click-throughs and all that. So many replies and, people far more successful than I am getting value out of it. So it's really tremendous, the response that we've gotten, and I want to keep delivering on that. So, our media strategy is like, okay, that weekly newsletter is really the piece that's doing the best for us right now. Then let's orient like the rest of our content around, taking pieces of the newsletter, but then getting people to subscribe. So that's kind of like, and that's kind of reusing content as well too. And that's the thing, like it melds so well with our podcast too, because, the vast majority of the time I'm either utilizing content that I've talked about on, a podcast to post in a newsletter or vice versa. So all of it's kind of correlated together and like doesn't require as crazy amounts of effort to get done, which I think is really, really important for a media strategy, so you can continue to focus on getting the big blocks of your business. But, I want to bring people into the newsletter, and hopefully that continues to direct more business to us with nurturing over time. And even if you don't bring a bit, like, fine, that's totally okay. Like, as long as I can provide some value for you all and help you reach the next level in your own life and business, like that to me just means a lot. I mean, I even got this text message. I mean, you can see it on our testimonials page now on the SLC website. Where somebody saw one of our guest posts on Ari Tipster, and this guy said, "Hey, this was most intelligent land investing article that he's ever read," and he runs a multi-million-dollar business. It's like, yeah, I would love to chat with you guys and potentially do some business together like that. Getting responses like that, it's just makes all the pain of writing and thinking of these topics worth it. Just knowing, okay, yeah, we are on the right track for building the right content strategy. And that's the thing with content. Like you have to be so consistent over such a long period of time to really start to reap the rewards. We've only been doing this 7 months for the newsletter, so we've like such a long way to go. But it's like, okay, those early fruits are ripening here, and like you just have to stick with it. And sometimes like the content strategies, you have to make a long-term bet, and you may not, like there's so much uncertainty and you have no idea, am I really hitting the audience or like I think this piece is going to perform, and then it doesn't really as much. Like, yeah, it's just you got to like learn over time to get it right. But I'm seeing that more and more too, of just like, our website views and so forth going up, because like, yeah, we're just putting out more content and hopefully, qualified for our audience, and those results are paying off. And like, again, I remarked again here within my notes of like, yeah, it's hard to understand consistency unless you're consistent yourself. So I talked about that more on a previous pod for Hormozi, but like it came up again and again, because again, these are the boring parts, the volume, the reps, the focus, the consistency. It's the stuff that is just so easily brushed over, but it's like 95% of the job is showing up and doing your work. And like, unless you are doing that personally or seeing truly consistent people doing the work, like it's hard to understand what it takes to get to the next level. So you just have to bear that in mind. Again, it's easy to talk about, easy for me to mention in 10 seconds here, but it is the hours and the days and the weeks and months and years that you have to put in. So other notes, I talked about being a data first business in order to be like a successful AI business. as well. And that's something that we've been pushing more on the land pricer side. Again, key updates there too, as we bring in more partners to help us take it to the next level. With this, I will have, there are a lot of conversations going on behind the scenes. So I will update you more when I have something more firm in hand here. And another key point here, so somebody had this was probably the best fireside chat that this guy really had a good handle on and was very thoughtful with his questions. But he was asking, it was a question leading into, the recent death of Alex's mom. Yeah, so tragic. Like he had, the high of high, like setting that world record with the book launch, and then his mom just suddenly died, like shortly thereafter. And it's just like a wild emotional swing. And he's talked about it a bit on his YouTube and so forth. And then Alex during this live event was just getting into more of a conversation just on, how he's reviewing his own his life and the remaining decades, hopefully, like many of us might have, to still live here. And as he was writing a eulogy for his mom, you have a certain amount of words that you can incorporate within it, and like by nature, like it's not gonna account for somebody's entire life. And so you have to be, inherently concise with what you do mention. And he said, even the people who are like titans of industry, and, you could largely consider Hormozi one of those by this point. Like he's like, hey, that, regardless of how good you are at business, like that might be a line or two in your eulogy, like a sentence. And then it's like, what else really makes up the rest of the eulogy? What else are people going to talk about, even if you're just like one of the greatest business leaders ever in the history of mankind? And he's like, for the most part, eulogies, like they really center around service and character. And he's like, yeah, he's just personally taking a lot more of that into account for the rest of his life that he wants to live. Like how do you fill in those chunks of rounding out, a life as a whole here? And I think about that a lot too. And then, eulogies, funeral speeches, like you'd also get this during wedding toasts or speeches. Like those tend to be my favorite parts of weddings. Like even if I don't, like if I'm not that close with whoever the bride and groom is, I don't really like know their family or something, like I still really love hearing those speeches. They're usually my favorite parts of weddings, just because like I love to kind of hear and see the impact people have had on close members of their family, friends, what have you, and how people might speak emotionally and deeply about people. And unfortunately, like we don't do that often. I think it really, and if it's a eulogy, on the receiving end, you won't even get it because you're dead there. So you might get it at a wedding, maybe like a birthday here and there. But I think it's something we should all do a bit more often. As an aside, we did this on conference for some of the smaller sessions. A couple other very small masterminds of just going around like a gratitude circle. It's like my favorite part, especially when you spend some time with these other people, like growing bonds. It just means so much. So yeah, you might, again, like wedding speeches, these gratitude circles occasionally, if you're so lucky, or eulogies. Yeah, it's mostly like a service and character type thing. And Alex was remarking, and if this was kind of like newer info, and I haven't heard him talk about this even since. But he's like, over this past year, him and Layla were just talking about where they've hit their money goal. Like they hit their number, and he's like, yeah, some people it's different. Some people might be like $1 million, some it's $1 billion, whatever. Yeah, I've heard him talk about his net worth. I think, it's somewhere in the $250 million-ish range, maybe a bit more after the book launch here, and probably growing. Like really, really sizable number. And where Alex was just remarking during this fireside chat of, where the returns he can get on extra money are just so diminishing at this point. Like at that amount of wealth, it just feels like he's exhausted pretty much everything that you can squeeze. Of course, you can always use like there's more. I've never seen somebody who's like couldn't spend all the money that they might have, even like the richest people in the world. Like theoretically, yes, they could spend all of it if they really wanted to. That is how strong our consumer culture is. But yeah, you get to these higher echelons, like there's only a handful of stuff, like you can buy like bigger boat or crazy amounts of houses, but like you're can pretty much do anything you want at that point from a financial freedom perspective. So I'm not too surprised. And he was just remarking like, yes, things are just so good in the business. They're expecting school to be worth 6 to 8 billion over the next 2 years. And I don't know what the stake Hormozi has in school, probably significant. They're expecting acquisition to be worth 2 to 3 billion in portfolio value over like the next 3 years. So he's like, yeah, it's really solid from a money side. And so, he's like, hey, for the first time in his life that he can remember, it's like money is not the number one thing to be focused on, like going forward, heading into 2026 and beyond. And he's like, yeah, like a lot of people are like giving him flack for this because his whole brand is surrounded by work harder, earn money, etc. How to be just a top-notch entrepreneur and follow this pathway. And he's like, people reserve the right, anybody should, to change their mind on something as new data becomes available, which I always believe in as well too. Like that's how scientists think. I can't tell you how many times my mind sometimes even changes on a daily basis, but you have to be humble with yourself or humble with the data, because if the truth changes or your mindset changes based on information you're taking in and so forth, like, yeah, who cares? You change your mind, like that is the nature of evolution. So Hormozi wants to put more time into things that aren't precisely monetary in focus, but more on like a service character side, which I would say already is trending in that direction. What he's done for just the community of entrepreneurs as a whole is a remarkable service, even if it's very oriented at a baseline. He's like, yeah, the goal is not to become the richest person in the world. Like that is never his goal, but now it's even less so. And he's like, yeah, he just exercises, 2.5 hours a day, and I exercise a ton too. It's like, that takes up a good amount of time, and you have to go like with that regret minimization framework that Bezos had popularized a few decades ago. It's like, yeah, that doesn't obviously help the monetary side, like that is for him because he really loves doing it. And I feel similarly from like a physical exercise perspective. And again, like minimizing regrets here, like picture yourself decades down the line, within your last few years of life, and what's going to cause some of the biggest regrets. And like me putting more time into exercise, or like I'll play basketball on Saturday mornings whenever I'm in town as much as possible. And it's like, yeah, theoretically I could just be grinding away at the computer more and more, but like to me, for like basketball, I'll play until the wheels come off, and I know I won't, barring some like crazy exoskeleton or genetic improvements, which I'm not ruling out, but for the most part, I'm 36 years old, and basketball is a young man's game. Like I want to play it as much as possible, and just knowing, when I'm 85, even if it costs some level of net worth that I could have made, like I know for certain I will not have regretted playing basketball is consistently as I did through as much of my remaining youth as possible. So I'm sure Hormozi feels similarly, and other folks too. Plus, like that exercise and movement just keeps me sane for the most part, and makes me a better worker anyway. So I totally get that, and like you have to prioritize for yourself, like what does winning feel like to you, and what's going to prevent the most amount of regrets later on in life. So that's where we're at here. We are definitely coming to the conclusion here. So I will get to more shortly, but I think, I throughout this, I felt really in the flow for this particular podcast. So hopefully that came across here, and you got some very interesting insights. Again, this is definitely some stuff I've never heard Hormozi talk about publicly here. So hopefully it's some key insights you can use in your own life. SeriousLand.capital for any of your land funding needs, $50K minimum purchase price, and Land Daily Diligence Facebook group for review of your land deals. Subscribe and share, everybody. Happy to chat with you all again. Looking forward to next time. Take care now. Bye.